For the United States, this first defeat in our nation's history would result in a collapse of confidence in American leadership, not only in Asia, but throughout the world. 3 American presidents have recognized the great stakes involved in Vietnam and understood what had to be done. In 1963, President Kennedy, with his characteristic eloquence and clarity, said, "We want to see a stable government there, carrying on the struggle to maintain its national independence. We believe strongly in that. We're not going to withdraw from that effort. In my opinion, for us to withdraw from that effort would mean a collapse not only of South Vietnam, but Southeast Asia. So we're going to stay there." President Eisenhower and President Johnson expressed the same conclusion during their terms of office. For the future of peace, precipitate withdrawal would be a disaster of immense magnitude. A nation cannot remain great if it betrays its allies and lets down its friends.
During World War II, in order to combat the Japanese invasion into Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh formed the Viet Minh, a political party inspired by Chinese and Soviet communism. After their defeat in World War II, the Japanese were forced to remove their forces and leave Vietnam under the power of an emperor. Seeing an opportunity, the Viet Minh took over the northern region of Vietnam and declared Ho Chi Minh as the president of that region. Although both the North and South wanted a united country, the North wanted a country modeled after communism, while the South didn't. The United States, being in the midst of the Red Scare and believing firmly in the domino theory, was therefore obligated to send supplies and soldiers in order to assist South Vietnam. But there was a limited number of soldiers in the military, and the US government started to draft young boys into it. One such boy was James Gibson. While the Vietnam War was going on, James Gibson had just graduated out of high school and was looking to go to college. Due to financial reasons, he had limited funds and decided to go to a junior college at the College of San Mateo. After taking the required classes for him to transfer to another college, he needed financial aid, so he went to get a part-time job. During this time, the Vietnam War was drawing more and more national attention, and Gibson eventually received a draft letter. He decided to go to the military, not just to go straight to Vietnam, but for an education. He looked at each branch of the military to see which had the education that he wanted, and ended up deciding on the Air Force. Thus, he joined the Air Force in 1964 and was trained in electronics and became a maintenance and repair worker for planes, control, and weather systems. He was stationed in the Phu Cat base in central South Vietnam, and although he wasn't a fighter, he had to always stay alert and ready to fight, as the Viet Cong sent small patrols to the base from time to time.
Our objective was to create a maintenance station, because I was in the electronics and keeping machines that the Air Force used, that aircraft used, to keep them flying properly, and make sure if an electronic component burned out, then we would replace it.
By 1965, although the majority of the American public supported the government's decision in terms of Vietnam and the war, there was still a significant population that opposed it. Each month, around 400,000 men were drafted into the army to keep up and meet the demand in Vietnam, which further agitated protesters. Many Americans were appalled by the violence and death happening in Vietnam to both the Vietnamese citizens and the soldiers. They would hold signs saying, "Vietnam is for the Vietnamese, let's get out." In one of the most well-known protests, on October 21st of 1967, of the 100,000 protesters that gathered at the Lincoln Memorial, 30,000 went on to march to the Pentagon. Later that year, the protests got additional publicity when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expressed his support for the anti-war movement because of the moral reasons, calling it, quote, "a blasphemy against all that America stands for."
My first feeling about the war was I really didn't want to take part in it. I felt as though the war was going on. The communists, I think at that time, wanted to take over South Vietnam, and the Vietnamese people in the South said, no, we want to have our own government, be democratic, if you will. And I kind of felt like, well, it was probably good that we were there to kind of help eliminate the Chinese from taking over South Vietnam so quickly and overrunning them. So overall, that was my experience. And then when I came back, when my tour of duty was over in Vietnam, I had a chance to take a deep breath and reflect on what I had done. In that, I felt like it was a good endeavor. I mean, I just felt kind of a positive, although sad to see people being killed. There was a number of Viet Cong teams that would go out and in armed teams and either kill people or take something and that sort of thing. And they even attacked the base, the Air Force base that I was on twice. So it's just not, it's nicer if there are no wars where people have to, go through conflict like that. But in this case, in my experience, I didn't have much to say about that. I just had to kind of go where the Air Force asked me to go and try to get my head around what was happening in the world events.
However, there were a lot of downsides of the Vietnam War that affected America. According to research performed by Harvard University, quote, almost 19% of the more than 3 million US troops who served in Vietnam returned with PTSD, also known as post-traumatic stress disorder or shell shock. It's a condition that left them with invasive memories, nightmares, loss of concentration, feelings of guilt, irritability, and in some cases, major depression. More than 10 years after the war, 10% of soldiers still could not leave the war behind. End quote. The Vietnam War had also ruined America's economy, as President Johnson was unwilling to raise taxes to pay for the war, and therefore he unleashed a barrage of inflation which crippled the economy. Congress also replaced the military draft with an all-volunteer force, as well as the country reducing the voting age to 18. The Vietnam War also shed light on the imperialistic nature of presidency, which inspired Congress to restrict the president's ability to send soldiers into war without the approval of Congress. This war also weakened the US's morale and its commitment to internationalism. Despite all these negative effects, the war seemed to have somewhat of a positive effect on James Gibson.
The experience with being there in Vietnam it kind of made me open up a little bit about, the world. And there are other things that are going on that I had never experienced before. Politics, for example, very, very strong force that can influence a group of people or a nation. Part of human nature. I mean, we all can't agree on one thing all the time. There may be reasons from our experiences or whatever that cause us to maybe second guess the proper way. What's the best way to solve a problem, for example? And being in Vietnam, I was able to kind of observe some of that, as well as not totally, but get a sense of feeling it. And consequently, the experience I had was, in general, broadening. It made me maybe a better person because I was able to not only observe, but feel some of these dynamic forces. And the war was still going on when I left, so there were no solutions at that point, but it was enlightening, if I may use that word, where I had never experienced war before or a conflict like that, like was taking place in Vietnam. It was a little, on one part, a little scary that something like that can happen.
James Gibson returned back to the U.S. in 1968, and because he had served his 4 years in the United States Air Force, he was released with an honorable discharge with the rank of Staff Sergeant. He headed back to continue his education at UC Berkeley, where, despite his interest in the sciences, he ended up majoring in English. Eventually, he ended up working for the 3M Company, which he grew to enjoy very much. He now resides with his wife and kids, and although the interview ended, Mr. Gibson wanted to share a poem which he wrote himself.
Well, there was one thing that I wrote, but I don't know if this is helpful to you. But I said I was an English major, and I don't know. I'll just share this for you with you. But I titled this "Good and Bad." Lots could be written about this wonderful life and how we should appreciate it all. Being grateful, however, should not blind us from conditions and forces that could make the light dark. The beautiful California forests, green and healthy, yield to the droughts and become dry tinder for the match or lightning, and hundreds of thousands of acres go up in smoke. The healthy human body, adapted to warding off attacks from diseases, eventually comes across an aggressive virus it finds difficult to defeat, and the virus mutates to an even more deadly attacker. Our brilliant, clever, and our brilliant and clever mind, capable of outstanding and logical thinking, finds that age and certain aspects of life take away our brain's power to outwit Alzheimer's and dementia and other joy-diminishing forces. In man's world, with similarities in social and climate challenges facing him, there should be more complementary political attitudes toward countries, but alas, the lure of power and dominance and greed overrule, and war and strong desire to control and dominate influence the world. Now, since there is good and bad happenings in life, one can't intentionally ignore the bad stuff, but can appreciate the good. Therefore, let us shine our light on the best things and experiences we can see, feel, and that bring us joy and happiness. Granted, bad things can happen, but we will give thanks for all the good we experience in life, which can save us some tears from our understanding and bring upon our lips a little smile of appreciation for this miracle of life.